6. The book of Isaiah is often considered a mini Bible. How many chapters are in the book of Isaiah? 66. When you look at chapters 1 to 39, there's a lot of Old Testament reference. Then chapter 40, it speaks about John the Baptist coming and speaking of the Messiah that is to come. And chapter 40 to 66 has a lot of New Testament fulfillment that'll be seen in the Messiah. It's quite fascinating as you look at structure of Scripture. Well, here in chapter 3, I find this very fascinating. I'm going to read for you because last night we talked about yoke. You remember the word yoke? We used that last night. This morning I was reading this, and I'll show you where it comes out. Follow with me as I read, beginning at verse 19. This is written by Jeremiah. Lamentations is written by Jeremiah in a time of dark captivity of the Babylonians. Here's a little side note. Watch this. How many years were they in the Babylonian captivity for? Does anyone remember? How many years were they in the Babylonian captivity for? Anyone? They were in captivity for 70 years. And does anyone know why they were in captivity for 70 years? This is fascinating. Because one of the Jewish practices in the Old Testament that God commanded the people to do, it was an agricultural culture, farming. He said the land is to lay rest every 7 years. So what's the land supposed to do? Lay rest every 7. 7 years later, 7. 7 years later, 7. Well, the nation of Israel neglected over 490 years to let the land rest. Over 490 years. They did not allow the land to rest. How many 7s are in 490? Okay, you ready for a light bulb to go on? 70 times 7. Hold on to that. You're going to see. Watch how it's going to come. So they're in captivity for 70 years. It's dark captivity. It's emptiness. Let's pick that up then in verse 19 of chapter 3. Remember, so this is being written in captivity. Remember my affliction and my wanderings, the wormwood and the gall. You know what wormwood means? Bitterness. C.S. Lewis refers to that in screw tape letters. Wormwood. Bitterness, gall. My soul, verse 20, my soul continually remembers it and is bowed down within me. But this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. What's the next expression in verse 22? What's the next expression in verse 22? Just say it. Steadfast love. Do you guys use these markers? Or I'll use this one, I think. The word steadfast love in Hebrew is a word chesed. Chesed. Chesed is steadfast love. Loyal love. Covenantal. Covenantal love. Correct that word. I probably spelled it wrong. Covenantal love. The idea of this love means the love of God is not based on what you do or don't do. The love of God is based on who He is. So you see, writing from a captivity, your steadfast love. I remember every day wormwood, bitterness, gall, sorrow. But, what does he say here? Isn't that kind of cute? This is the kind of stuff my wife does. She leaves me little notes. And she knew I was going to hit on this. Isn't that kind of cool? This is what she does. These little things. Oh, right here. The steadfast love, covenantal love, this love that's not based on what we do or don't do, this love is based on who He is. That is significant. They're in captivity for how many years? 70 years. You know where this word chesed, and I want you to remember that. Someday you're going to hear someone speak on this, and you're going to go, I remember that word. Because you know what the New Testament equivalent, it's not the same word, but it's equivalent, not same word, but equivalent, is the Greek word agape. Chesed in the Old Testament. That's a love of God is not based on what we do or don't do. That's the love of God that's based on who He is. That is seen in the person of Rahab. Remember the story of Rahab, chesed. That's also in the story of, you know the lady Gomer? You know who Gomer was? Gomer was married to Hosea. And Gomer married to Hosea, in which, this is what occurred is that Gomer, the wife of Hosea, committed adultery. And God says to Hosea, go into the slave market of prostitution, and there shall be standing by her back. Hosea chapter 2, it speaks of, you know how much Hosea, the groom, bought the bride back? You know how much he paid? 15 shekels of silver plus a homer and a half of barley. You know what a homer and a half of barley equals? 15 shekels of silver. 15 shekels plus 15 shekels equals how much? 30 shekels of silver. So watch this. Hosea, the bridegroom, stepped into the slave market of prostitution, and he buys the bride back. And how much did he pay? 30 shekels of silver. Do you know anyone that stepped into the slave market of sin and bought the bride back, for 30 shekels? Jesus Christ was sold for 30 shekels of silver. Very interesting here as you see this. Quite interesting. The steadfast love. And that love of God is not based on what we do or don't do. That love of God is based on who He is. Do you understand that kind of love? Do you understand that kind of love? When our kids were younger, they used to love eating spaghetti. You ever watch little kids eat spaghetti? You ever watch little kids that have spaghetti all over their face and noodles hanging out of their nose and, sauce all through their hair? And they come running up to you and they go, Dad, give me a big hug and kiss. It's gross. What should I tell them? Go clean yourself. Then I'll love you. Is that what I tell them? Go clean yourself. Then I'll love you. That's not what I do. I wrap my arms around that little rascal with spaghetti sauce all over his face, and it's gross. Because you remember, my love is not based on what he does or doesn't do. My love for him is based on who I am towards him. I wrap my arms around that little rascal. I love him, then clean him. Not clean him, then love him. That's religion. Religion cleans, then loves. A relationship with Christ loves, then cleans. And that is what God wants to demonstrate to these people in the nation of Israel. A steadfast love. The love of God for Rahab. The love of God as for Gomer. You ever notice that in the genealogy of Jesus? I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but in the genealogy of Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew, how many women are mentioned in a Jewish genealogy? You would never, ever, 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 ever have women mentioned. But in the Jewish genealogy of Jesus, you've got 4 women mentioned. You would never have women mentioned in a Jewish genealogy, but in the genealogy of Jesus, you've got 4 women mentioned. Who are those 4 stellar women mentioned in the Jewish genealogy of Jesus? Maybe Sarah, maybe Rebecca, maybe Esther. No, who do you have? Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, Bathsheba. What do you know about those 4 women mentioned in the genealogy of your Messiah, my Messiah, Jewish Messiah? Of those 4 women, what do you know about them? Each of those 4 women are Gentiles. Each of those 4 women are associated to sexual sin. Tamar was involved in incest. Rahab was a prostitute. I know what you're thinking. How was Ruth guilty? Ruth was innocent. But Ruth came from a genealogy of people where it was the descendant of Lot and one of his daughters formed what's called Moab. Ruth came from Moab. Ruth herself was pure, but Ruth came from a very sexually immoral people. When people in that culture said what happens in Moab stays in Moab, you know a city today, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Kind of Moab had the same reputation. That's where Ruth came from. And what do we know about Bathsheba? She had sin with King David. Those 4 women are mentioned in Jewish genealogy. And you know what the beauty of it is this. In which in Matthew chapter 1, verse 21, it says Christ came to save who? To save who? His people. Who are his people? Abraham and Rahab. Very interesting. Those are 2 examples used for faith in the New Testament. You go to the book of Romans, you go to the book of Hebrews, you go to the book of James. You've got 2 individuals often mentioned. Abraham, you look at this in James. James chapter 2, you've got Abraham and Rahab. They're not just randomly picked from the Old Testament, but that's basically shown from a patriarch to a prostitute, a Jew to a Gentile, men to women, and all extremes in between. Quite fascinating. The Bible is just woven together. So he says this back here in Lamentations, the steadfast love, the love of God that is not based on what we do or don't do. That love never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They're new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I will hope in him. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul who seeks him. We were talking about this last night. It is good that one should wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. And look at verse 27. This is what I read this morning. This is what's called fresh bread. It is good for a man that he bear the yoke in his youth. May we be led by him every step that we say. And watch this, Brody. It's quite fascinating. I began with this. The Bible is just woven together. How many years, what year were they to let the land lay rest? What year? Every 7th year. Over 490 years, they did not allow the land to rest. How many 7s are in 490? 70 times 7. Just say it to me one more time. 70 times 7. Everyone in the class. 70 times 7. That was a known phrase. Let me give you a known phrase in our culture today. When you go to the airport, how long do you have to be at the airport before your plane takes off? Maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours. When I was a kid, you could show up 20 minutes before a flight, and you could bring your mom on the plane to say goodbye to you. It was quite fascinating. You know what I mean? I mean that. Now you need 2 hours. And watch this. Watch this, David. If someone says to you, air travel has changed since when? 9/11. Say what? Say it again, Grace. 9/11. 9/11. 9/11. 9/11. Let's say it one more time. 9/11. My great-grandmother that woke up from the dead right now, she would not have a clue what you mean by 9/11. But that's a term, Brody, where we go 9/11, 9/11, 9/11. I remember. You ready? So with me, say 70 times 7. 70 times 7. 70 times 7. 70 times 7. One last time, 70 times 7. Years later, Jesus the dude sitting around with some of his disciples, are sitting around a fire, and one of them just says, how often should we forgive our enemies? 70 times 7. And they went, yes, we were in captivity, and God forgave us. 70 times 7. And so, my Bible's here. That is a phrase that should be used for endless forgiveness. 70 times 7. That was a phrase that a Jew would know, that goes back to the Babylonian captivity, and he forgave us 70 times 7. All right? This is what I want you to do. Turn to Proverbs chapter 3, and we're going to just continue and read and then come back and talk through it. And so what I want you to do with a neighbor or a little Proverbs partner, I would encourage you. Next week, you've got spring break. This is what I would encourage you. Something that you're practicing now, something I would encourage you to do next week, and then do the whole month of April, is have a Proverbs partner. Someone in this room that you can say is my Proverbs partner. And maybe right now you just sit with someone at your table. But for all of spring break through the end of March, and then take the whole month of April and go through the book of Proverbs chapter by chapter by chapter. So as you go into next week, just pick up with the day and the chapter. And so right now, with maybe just someone at your table or a couple of you around, read from chapter 3 where we left off yesterday. We left off chapter 3 and read from verse 23 through to the end of chapter 4. Okay? So with someone there or around you, chapter 3, verse of 24. We left off with 23. 24 through chapter 4 and verse 27. Okay? Ready? Go for it. Being in God's Word. Go for it.
One more time.
Did I miss something? Sorry. Chapter 3, verse 24 through chapter 4.
Okay.
Perfect. let's just do this in your group still. The end of chapter 4. So still in your groups, chapter 4, verse 20 to 27. Just share together, whether on your own, personally just reflecting or sharing in your group. What are some of these things that are being said here in verse 20 to 27 that I've got to personalize? What I mean by that is, my son, remember he's speaking to the next generation. Be attentive to my words. Incline your ear. Let them not escape. Verse 23, keep your heart. Verse 24, put away. Verse 25, let your eyes look directly forward. 26, ponder the path of your feet. Verse 27, don't swerve to the right or to the left. Is there something you're going through right now? Is there something that you're faced with? Is there something up and coming that these verses are very personal to you? And share that even together, okay? So just take a couple minutes and look at that section, chapter 4, 20 to 27, right? Go for it. Just a couple minutes. All right. Anyone have anything that you'd want to even share as a group? In that section, anything just hit you a certain way? Maybe, all of your reading, but in particular, verse 20 to 27. Anyone? I thought, yeah, Brody.
Well, I actually was reading James a while back, and in chapter 4, verse 6, it references Proverbs 3:34. So I turned back to that, and it says, though he scoffs at scoffers and scorns the scorners. And in James, it says, he gives us more and more grace. Therefore, it says, God is opposed to the proud and the wicked, but gives grace to the humble. That one just stuck out.
Great observation, and I'll show you why. Often when you read the book of James, people call that the New Testament equivalent of the book of Proverbs. James is the New Testament equivalent of the book of Proverbs in a lot of various ways, because right from chapter 1, verse 5, if any of you lack wisdom, ask of God. Book of Proverbs, wisdom. Book of James, very practical in its application. Anyone else before we go to the notes? Chapter 4. Yeah.
26 and 27, we're kind of going backwards. So a lot of time we're tempted to turn to the right or the left. But then we have to remember to stay on the straight and narrow path, because every time we stray, we go farther and farther.
Yeah. Remember, I started yesterday. We're either delighting in him or I'm drifting from him. And as we drift, it's very subtle. And before we know it, we're down a dead end. All right. So let's just pick up in our notes here. This is what we hit on last night. We'll go right into chapter 4, and then we'll start reading chapter 5. But here in chapter 3, wisdom's promise. We kind of hit this last night. The idea, that word trust means to lean, means to roll over onto. Have you ever done a trust fall? You know, maybe you guys have done it here, you've done it wherever. You know, you kind of stand and you kind of fall and someone will catch you. It's the idea of that trust fall in which you release. Well, I remember in class one year I was teaching on this, and there was a guy named Keith, and he sat about here. And anytime I needed a volunteer, Keith's hand would just go up like that. He didn't even know what he was volunteering for. His hand just went up. I said, okay, Keith, come on up here. And I had a fairly high table. It wasn't just on the stage, but it was a high table. I said, Keith, what I want you to do is get up on this table. It's fairly high. And at the count of 3, I want you to fall back. These students are going to catch you, kind of thing. And so he got up there, and I said, okay, Keith, count of 3. Count of 3, you're going to fall backwards, and these students are going to catch you. Count of 3, and I said, okay, class, let's all count to 3. And I was standing this way behind Keith, and I said, okay, class, ready? 1, 2. And when we got to 2, I just shoved him like that. And Keith's like going back like, whoa, Frank, you didn't count to number 3. And I said, Keith, when does trouble always come when you expect it to come? Trouble doesn't come on the number 3. Trouble sometimes comes when we don't expect it, it will come. And it's in those moments that we have to be found trusting in him. There was a lady by the name of Corrie ten Boom. Some of you might know the name. She hid Jews during World War II. Her family did there in the Netherlands. Actually, we visited her house there last year, and I'm going to speak in an event in that area of the Netherlands next year. But I remember this is what Corrie ten Boom said. I mean, she's passed many years, but in the 40s, in this time of just concentration camps and all of that, she said this: when I look around, I become distressed. When I look within, I can become depressed. But when I look to Christ, only then can I find true rest. I look around, I can become distressed. I look within, I can become depressed. But when I look to Christ, only then can I find true rest. And so the whole idea, wisdom's path, fear him. Wisdom's path, honor him. Wisdom's path, discipline yourself for him. Then chapter 4, which you guys just read, is live with wisdom. I hope you see, we're going to come back to this, but we listen to wisdom. That's what we hit, chapter 1. Listen. We look for wisdom. We lean into wisdom. And now we live with wisdom. And you can see this in this section here. You see this in this section. Hear, O sons. Remember, every one of these, the first 9 chapters, hear my son, hear my son, hear my son. So get wisdom. Verses 1 to 9. Get wisdom when? Get wisdom when? Get wisdom in your early life. And you know what? Age is a matter of fact, but maturity is a choice. Age is a matter of fact. We're all growing old, but maturity is a choice. You guys can be 18 and very much mature, more mature than some of my friends that are 58. So age is a matter of fact. We're all growing old, but maturity is a choice. And what does it mean, responsibility? Responsibility is my response to his ability. My response to his ability. The quicker we get to understand more of Christ and less of me is going to be to our greatest ability and strength. When, as the Apostle Paul says, it's in my weakness I get to understand Christ as my strength. The quicker we get to understand our weakness, it's then we get to understand his strength. So often we're filled with pride, aren't we? And what does pride do? Pride simply comes before the fall. I remember as a kid, we used to play something called King of the Mountain. I don't know if you've ever seen that. They plow all the snow into the corner of the fence, and you get up on that snowbank just throwing kids into the fence. It was kind of fun, like when we were in the 3rd grade. Well, I remember in the 3rd grade, there was a kid in my class. His name was Hal Turner. I'm not making these names up. Hal Turner in the 3rd grade, he was just built like a truck. Massive kid, built. And man, nobody could get Hal Turner off the snowbank. And so one afternoon, I remember we were playing this game, and I saw Hal Turner up on the snowbank, and I thought, this is what I'm going to do. I snuck out of a side door. I came across the playground. I ran up the back side of that snowbank, and I slammed him into the fence. As I was gloating with pride, because pride comes before the fall, as I was gloating because I was king of the mountain, I was El Rey de la Montaña, I was the man, out of another door came a kid by the name of Alan Grimes. And Alan Grimes in the 3rd grade, he weighed probably like 40 pounds. And if he stuck his tongue out and turned to the side, you know what he looked like? He looked like a zipper. And as I was gloating with pride because I pushed all these kids off the mountain, Alan Grimes came across the playground, up the backside of the snowbank, and slammed me into the fence. Pride comes before the fall. I want to encourage you guys. I love spending time with 18-year-olds, but I want to tell you something. Get to know wisdom now. Because you know what wisdom says? I got nothing to prove. I got nothing to lose. I got nothing to hide. Often in our youth, we think we know more than everybody else. Sometimes even in our youth, we think we know certain things that others don't know. That often becomes pride. And I want to say this to you right now, please. When you go back home and you get involved with your churches, you get involved with your college groups or whatever they might be, go to learn, go to share, go to help. Don't go back and boast that you know more than everybody else. That's a danger of going to Bible school, because we can go back home like the experts. Let's go back not as an expert. Let's go back as a servant, and let's go back and serve. Get to know wisdom in your early years. Then look at verses 10 to 19. I love how it begins there. Hear, my son, and accept this, verse 10, the words that the years of your life may be many. Verse 12, when you walk, your step will not be hampered. Look at verse 13. Keep hold of instruction. Don't let go. Guard her. And what? Then she is your life. I love verse 18. The path of the righteous is like what? The path of the righteous is what? It's like what? The dawning of a day. You know what it says in the book of Ecclesiastes? You could see this. Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 1. It speaks of youth as the dawning of a day. You're in youth right now. That Hebrew word for youth is dawning of the day. I mean, probably most of you still have your grandparents alive. I don't. But what is the age of some of your grandparents? 80s, right? You know what? Where are they in the sunset? You're right here maybe at 18. And you know where your grandparents are? They're maybe over here in the sunset. You're in the sunrise. They're in the sunset. And so he says this, wow, the way of the righteous is like the dawning of a day, and it shines light. I mean, let the life of Christ in you and through you shine around. And then the last thing, verses 20 to 27, get wisdom your entire life. This is what I want us to do just to make this incredibly practical. I want you to speak out a word around the room or a phrase, a word or a phrase from verse 20 to 27. Anyone, just speak some of these words. Speak some of these words. What's a phrase? Anyone? Just, what was that? 20 to 27, yeah.
Yeah, ponder.
Ponder. What else? What's another word? Attentive. What's another word? 20 to 27. What's a word? What's a phrase? Yeah. Guard. That's like protect. What else? Put away. Yeah, put away. What did you say? Healing. See, these phrases, incredibly practical living. And this is what he wants, and this is what he desires. It's very interesting there. Once again, my son, you see that expression? Not just to his son, but the next generation. Be attentive to my words. Ponder. Verse 27, do not swerve to the right or to the left. Keep your foot from what? Evil. I remember a few years ago I was speaking at a college retreat weekend in a place called Wasilla, Alaska. Does anyone know what begins in Wasilla, Alaska? Well-known, world-renowned event. It begins in Anchorage, but it really kicks off in Wasilla, Alaska. Say it? The dog sled. It's called the Iditarod. Well, I was speaking at a church. It was all college students. A place called Lazy Mountain Bible Church. Yeah. Are you from Alaska? You know? Lazy Mountain Bible Church in Palmer, Alaska. And I remember as I was just getting to know some of the students there, I just casually asked, I said, so what kind of what do you do as a living, or what's your career or job or whatever? And this one guy goes, I help here, I do construction, this and that. And he goes, for a hobby, I'm a musher. I said, a musher? The mushers are the ones that run those dog sleds. And I remember saying, he says, it's quite interesting. I like to know more about dogs and dog races and that stuff. What does it take for a dog to run a race? And he went into all this detail about its diet and its training and all that. But I remember 3 things that I heard him say. He said this: when a dog runs a race, it needs a mind that is sound, focused. I just put his thoughts together when he said this, a sound mind. Then he says it needs a passionate heart. It's going to endure through the ups and downs of that race. A strong heart. And it says it needs feet for all kinds of terrain. You can imagine what that's like. I mean, it's miles and miles. And it needs certain, feet. I thought about it's like stable feet. And every time I read this passage there in Proverbs chapter 4, I think about that. As we run this race of life, we need to have a sound mind fixed on one goal. We need to have a strong heart that is passionate through the ups and downs of life, because life is like a roller coaster. And we need to have feet that are stable for any terrain that you're going to face now, you're going to face 6 months from now, you're going to face 20 years from now. Whatever that might be. Sound mind, strong heart, stable feet. And that's what he says. Guard your heart and ponder your feet as you run the race. All right? Let's take chapter 5 then. So break up into your groups again. And where we're going to enter into this whole new discussion of adultery. And which we talked about this last night. I'll bring this back up for you guys. But this is what we're going to be looking at in chapter 5. So let me leave this. So break up into your groups chapter 5. And what stands out to you? So just read it, your Proverbs partner, your table person right there. Take some time, read through chapter 5. What stands out to you? What's a comment? What's a thought? What's a question that you might have? Observation as from chapter 5. All right? Go for it.